We're going to take a look at monitor view and set. Monitor view is typically used when you are working with a bunch of controllers that all have a similar program in them. So typically this would be at startup. You got a bunch of VAVs or unit ventilators or whatever it is, a bunch of unitary devices with the same program. In monitor view, you can work with them all at once. So you can read sensor values, change set points, and do this all en masse. And this really saves a lot of time when you're commissioning modules. Perfect example is overriding all your hot water valves and then watching your discharge air temps increase to verify that the valves are working. Another good use of it is if you need to make a change to a program, a common program that's running in many controllers, but the controllers obviously probably have unique space set points, maybe airflow set points, calibration factors. You can use monitor view to save all those settings. Then you can do a one-to-many download to all those controllers and download that common program, and then come back with monitor view and restore all the controller-specific settings. Let's take a look at how this works. So I got a LAN here. I got 4 controllers here that all have the same program in them. To get started, you just right-click on one, add it to the monitor. It's going to bring up this window. And by default, you're going to get the LAN and the outstation, the controller addressing, and the controller name. For the rest of these, I'm just going to drag them and drop them on. If I wanted to add every controller in this LAN, I can right-click on the LAN and hit Add to Monitor, and that will add everything underneath there. So now that I got the controllers I want to work with in monitor view, to add points, there's 2 ways to do it. There's the harder way, depending on if you know textcoms or not. You can come up in here, manage columns, and then you can add as many columns as you want, and you have to fill out the textcoms directly and give them a name, and it will add those in. The easier way to do this is to simply use system view, and you can drag and drop the stuff you want to work with. So let's say I want to work with my unoccupied heating set point, and I want the value. Now here, if you were to grab the knob right here and drag it over, it by default will create, I think, 3 different columns. One with a label, one with a value, and another with the units. Well, I don't really care about the label or the units. I just want the value. So I'm going to drag that over. Maybe I want to work with the occupied set point as well. And you can also dive into the blocks themselves, the actual program blocks, and edit parameters in there. So here's a logic block that has a combination here. I can drag that in. And maybe I want to look at some sensor values. So we can drag those in as well. The one drawback to this drag and drop method is it doesn't automatically grab the module's label and throw it up in here. And that's partially to do because the controller doesn't save that on all the blocks. But it does on knobs and sensors. So it would be nice if they would make that automatically grab the module label. But anyway, it doesn't. So if you were to add a whole bunch of columns here, this is going to get to be hard to even look at and figure out what's what. So it's best to come back in manage columns and actually give these names. I do that, and it gives us some names that we can actually live with, and you can see the values here that are currently live in the controllers. If I wanted to edit these, I can easily just come in here and make a change. Now, the red exclamation point is letting you know that the value you entered is not matching the controller. So it hasn't sent this down yet. If I wanted to push it down to the controllers, I need to hit the download button. That'll commit everything in there. And now I can hit the refresh, which causes it to go out and get the live values from the controller again. You can see that controller must have a limit that doesn't allow me to change it below 50 degrees, so it clipped it at 50. Another way to make changes, if you want to change a whole bunch at the same time, you can select them and come up to the block edit and then download it. Now if we hit refresh, we can see those controllers took those values. Same thing with these logic blocks. You know, this is diving into how a logic block works in Trend, but if I wanted to change the combination, that is something you can do. Let's say we have monitor view all set up for commissioning boxes or whatever. We have a useful setup in monitor view for these programs. If we want to save that into the set project, you can save it as a new template. Maybe this is our startup template. This is, let's call it heat pump startup. And now I can come back. If I close this project out and I want to come back, this template will be saved in the list here. You can also copy these templates that are saved from one project to another. Another way to use them, if you use the solutions library within set, you can embed these templates within a saved solution, and then when you drag and drop them into a project, it'll bring the templates with it. So that saves the templates. That basically sets up the columns and the names. It doesn't save the actual data that's in here. If I want to save, let's say I fired up a bunch of modules and balancing was done. Now I want to save everything and get the state of the system as I left it. You'd hit this button over here to save the session. Let's just say, you know, this is heat pump as built. You know, whatever, 3.1.19. So now if I were to close out of monitor view and to touch monitor view will back off, I'm going to just hit that and notice it automatically goes back to the last template you were using. Well, let's say I want to restore and open what I was looking at before. There's my file. And there's all the settings that I saved. Another feature of monitor view is you can add conditional formatting to the columns. So maybe you want your sheet to automatically flag sensors that are open or shorted. So you could look at values and color code the cells based on those values. So if we look at these aux set points and maybe just pretend that they're space temperatures and I want to flag everything outside of, say, 77 and 75. If you go into manage columns and we look at the aux set point, if I click here, I get the conditional format editor and I can start adding rules. So maybe if this is greater than 77, I want to flag that as red. And maybe I do another one that says if it's less than, let's go with 75. We'll shade that blue. Now you can see it flags it. So that's kind of handy if you do go through the time of making standard programs and making templates to go with them. It's real quick and easy to at least have a monitor view that's going to flag sensors that are shorted or opened or other issues that should be looked at. You can do that real quick and easy. Another thing, so the use case where you have a common program, it's got a mistake or you need to add something, but the controllers have a bunch of unique settings. Like we can see here, heat pump 1 has got a different setting here and the aux set points are all different. So if we save the data, which we already did, I'll save it again. And now I'm going to come back in here and make these all the same. Like they just got downloaded the same controller program. I'm going to commit that. So this would simulate essentially I just downloaded one program to all the modules, so all the settings are unique. If I want to get back the old settings, there's a little bit of a trick to it. So if I open up my prior settings, and that's newest. So I have the old settings. The problem is I don't have the red exclamation point. I can't download these settings as is because it doesn't see it as a change. It just loaded the old settings. It's kind of a headache while working with this. And it looks like I threw them out of order. So the way to get it to write these back out is to do a copy. You have to select all the values you want to work with, do a copy, make sure you don't have the headers or anything else selected, just the values. Do a refresh. So now we can see they're all the same. And now I want to paste back. And the key to this is when you paste back, whatever you selected, if it was 2 columns by 4 rows, when you paste, you have to have 2 columns by 4 rows selected when you do the paste. If you don't do that, it's going to give you an error and you're going to have to rejigger things and try again. So now if I download, I do a refresh on everything, you can see those controllers have the settings that they had. So that's pretty handy when you have to make a change to a lot of controllers, but you don't want to lose all those settings. That pretty much sums up using monitor view. It's a real great way to commission controllers, to back up settings in controllers. And like I said, if you have to make a change to a common program and a lot of controllers that have unique settings, monitor view is really the tool to use.